This is Dr. Hutch, and this is a presentation on pregnancy, growth, and development. Sperm and secondary oocytes unite in fertilization, and they form a zygote, and then pregnancy begins. After 38 weeks of cell division, growth and development of distinctive tissues and organs occur, and a baby is born. The humans grow, then they develop and age. Growth is an increase in size and involves an increase in cell numbers. Development includes growth and aging, and it's a continuous process where an individual changes during their lifetime. The prenatal period is from fertilization to birth, and the postnatal period is from birth to death. Fertilization, or conception, is the union of a secondary oocyte and a sperm cell. It takes place in the infundibulum of the uterine or fallopian tube. And as far as the transport of the sex cells, before fertilization can occur, the secondary oocyte must be ovulated and enter a uterine tube. Sperm travel from the vagina through the cervix and the body of the uterus into the uterine tube. The oocyte survives 12 to 24 hours after ovulation. Sperm can reach the oocyte within 1 hour of intercourse, and only a few hundred of 200 to 600 million sperm in an ejaculation reach the secondary oocyte. Sperm can survive up to 6 days, though, in the female tract. Only one sperm can fertilize the oocyte, however. Sperm first invade the corona radiata. This is a layer of follicular cells that surround the oocyte, and they dissolve it with acrosomal enzymes. Next, sperm digest the zona pellucida, glycoprotein layer that closely surrounds secondary oocyte. Several hundred sperm participate in removal of the layers around the oocyte, and only one sperm will actually penetrate the oocyte's membrane and fertilize the oocyte. Upon entry of the sperm head, the zona pellucida hardens to prevent other sperm from entering the oocyte. As sperm nucleus enters the oocyte, secondary oocyte completes meiosis II, producing a tiny polar body in a large cell that contains a nucleus containing female's chromosomes. The nuclei of the sex cells are called pronuclei until they unite, and the pronuclei now unite, completing fertilization. The fertilized egg is now a zygote and contains 46 chromosomes. This is a typical number for a human body cell. Assisted reproductive technologies. Conception normally occurs in the uterine tube, where the sperm and egg merge. Abnormal gamete production or blockage that hinders the sperm and egg from meeting can result in infertility. 1% of U.S. births each year result from various methods of assisted reproductive technologies. Donated sperm and intrauterine insemination. The doctor places donated sperm into the cervix or into the body of the woman's uterus. It's used if the male partner is infertile or carries a genetic disease, or if the woman wants to raise a child without a male partner. In vitro fertilization. This is fertilization which occurs outside the woman's body, and then the embryo is placed into the woman's uterus. This is used in cases of uterine tube blockage. In gamete intrafallopian transfer, the woman takes superovulation drugs. The largest secondary oocytes removed and mixed with man's sperm. The doctor deposits most active oocytes and sperm together into the woman's uterine tube. This works better than in vitro fertilization. All right, let's go through pregnancy and the prenatal period. So in pregnancy, the presence of a developing offspring in the uterus. The prenatal period usually lasts 38 weeks from conception to birth. The prenatal period is divided into 3 stages: pre-embryonic stage, and fetal stage. The pre-embryonic stage is from fertilization to the 2nd week and includes cleavage blastocyst formation, implantation, and development of the extraembryonic membranes. The period of cleavage. So cleavage is a rapid cell division and distribution of the zygote cytoplasm into progressively smaller cells. The cells produced during cleavage are called blastomeres. A morula is a solid mass of about 16 cells, which moves into the uterus. The blastocyst. This is a hollow ball of cells that attaches to the endometrium of the uterus. The inner cell mass gives rise to the embryo proper. The trophoblast are cells forming the wall of the blastocyst and develop into the structures that assist the embryo and produce human chorionic gonadotrophin, which maintains the corpus luteum during early pregnancy. Implantation. This is attachment of the blastocyst to the uterine lining. The blastocyst secretes proteolytic enzymes to digest part of the endometrium. The trophoblast develops the microvilli that invade the endometrium. The endometrium surrounds the blastocyst, and the process occurs between the end of the first week and the end of the second week. The trophoblast produces human chorionic gonadotropin to keep the corpus luteum viable and prevent blastocyst rejection by the immune system. The placenta forms from the endometrium in cells surrounding the embryo and attaches the embryo to the uterine wall. It performs nutrient, gas, and waste exchange between the embryo and the mother. Pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. After in vitro fertilization and before implantation, cells are removed from the cleavage embryos and analyzed for genetic disorders. Healthy embryos can then be implanted in the mother's uterus. In cleavage embryos, it's safe to remove 1 or 2 cells. The rest of the embryo will develop normally after implantation. It's used to diagnose devastating inherited illnesses such as cystic fibrosis and certain forms of anemia, and then select only healthy embryos to be implanted. It's also used to find an embryo which, after implantation and birth, can provide umbilical cord stem cells to a sibling or other recipient with a close surface antigen match, suffering from an inherited disease. Extraembryonic membrane formation and placentation. The chorion is formed by trophoblasts and a second layer of cells that lines the trophoblast, the outermost extraembryonic membrane. Projections grow out of the trophoblast and invade the endometrium, and these become chorionic villi. The lacunae, irregular spaces in the endometrium around the chorionic villi, formed by the actions of proteolytic enzymes. It fills with maternal blood. Embryonic blood vessels transport blood to and from the embryo via connecting stalk, attaching the embryo to the developing placenta. The embryonic capillary network forms in the chorionic villi for nutrient exchange. The amnion. This is a second extraembryonic membrane. It develops around the embryo during the second week. Amniotic fluid. This is fluid that fills the space between the embryonic disc and the amnion. It protects and cushions the embryo and keeps a constant temperature. Extraembryonic membrane formation and placentation. Amniotic cavity gets so large that the amnion contacts the surrounding chorion and they fuse into the amniochorionic membrane. The yolk sac, extraembryonic membrane that forms during the second week on the underside of the embryonic disc and forms blood cells during early development. Allantois, extraembryonic membrane that forms during the third week between the yolk sac and connecting stalk. It forms blood cells and umbilical blood vessels. The placenta, it forms from disc-shaped areas where the chorion contacts the uterine wall, contains embryonic and maternal portions. Placental membrane, it separates embryonic blood from the maternal blood. Nutrients and respiratory gases are exchanged between the embryo and mother and consists of the endothelium of an embryonic capillary and the epithelial wall of the chorionic villus. The embryonic stage. From third week of the prenatal development to the end of the 8th week, and includes gastrulation and organogenesis. It's the most critical period of development, since the embryo implants in the uterus and all the body parts form. Gastrulation. This is movement of the cells within the embryonic disc to form multiple layers. 2 layers are present in the embryonic disc by the end of the 2nd week, the outer ectoderm and the inner endoderm. Through gastrulation, a middle layer, the mesoderm, forms between them. Primary germ layers, the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm of the embryo, from which all the organs form, also called organogenesis. The gastrula. This is an embryo that has gone through gastrulation and contains 3 primary germ layers. Gastrulation and organogenesis. Gastrulation is vital since the fate of the cell is determined by which layer it's in. Cells of the ectoderm and endoderm are epithelial cells. Cells of the mesoderm are connective tissue cells. Primary germ layers retain stem cells so that in an adult, tissues can grow and repair. The primary germ layers and structures that arise from them include the ectodermal cells, which form the nervous system, some special sensory organs, epidermis, hair, nails, skin glands, linings of the mouth, and the anal canal. The mesodermal cells form the muscle tissues, bone tissue, blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, internal reproductive organs, kidneys, and epithelial linings of the body cavities. The endodermal cells form the pancreas, gallbladder, and linings of the digestive tract, respiratory tract, urinary bladder, and urethra. Teratogens are factors that cause malformations by affecting the embryo during periods of rapid growth, development, or specialization. Some causes of birth defects. Thalidomide. This is a mild tranquilizer found to cause malformation of limbs when taken by pregnant women early in pregnancy during critical time for limb formation. Rubella, German measles virus, which is a powerful teratogen. The timing of exposure determines the types of defects. There is now a vaccine. Alcohol. Fetal alcohol effects or fetal alcohol syndrome cause unusual facial structure, slow growth, and impaired intellect. Cigarettes. They impair oxygen delivery to the fetus, resulting in poor growth, low birth weight, stillbirth, and spontaneous abortion. Nutrients and malnutrition. Nutrients in large quantity, especially vitamins, can cause harm. Malnutrition slows fetal growth and shifts metabolism so that as the child grows to adulthood, more likely to have obesity or type 2 diabetes. Occupational hazards. Certain chemicals in the workplace can be teratogens, causing birth defects and spontaneous abortion. And Zika virus, mosquito-borne virus. If the pregnant woman is exposed during the first or early 2nd trimester, the baby may be born with an extremely small head with diminished brain matter termed microcephaly. Zika is carried in semen. The fetal stage. This begins at the end of the 8th week of prenatal development and continues until birth. Growth is rapid, and the body portions change significantly. At the beginning of this stage, the head is relatively large and the lower limbs are short. In the 3rd month, the body lengthens quickly and the growth of the head slows. The upper limbs reach the relative length they will keep throughout the development. By the 12th week, external reproductive organs can be distinguished as male or female. During the 4th month, lower limbs lengthen significantly, and the skeleton continues ossification. During the 5th month, growth slows, hair grows, and muscles contract. During the 6th month, the fetus gains weight and skin is wrinkled. During the 7th month, eyes open, fat is deposited, and skin gets smoother. During the final trimester, organs specialize and grow, and the brain cells form networks. The digestive and respiratory systems are the last to mature. Fetal blood in circulation. During the fetal development, maternal blood supplies oxygen and nutrients and removes wastes. Exchange occurs through the placental membrane, and umbilical vessels transport blood to and from the fetus. Fetal hemoglobin can carry 20 to 30% more oxygen than adult hemoglobin. The umbilical vein transports oxygen-rich blood from the placenta to the fetus. Inductus venosus. This breaks off from the umbilical vein, bypasses the liver, and joins inferior vena cava. Oxygen-rich blood from the placenta mixes with oxygen-poor blood from the lower portion of the fetus. The mixture passes through in the inferior vena cava to the right atrium. The foramen ovale. This is an opening between the right and left atria in the fetal heart. Most of the blood entering the right atrium is shunted into the left atrium, since the fetal lungs are not functional. A small amount of blood enters the pulmonary trunk to nourish the lung tissue. Ductus arteriosus, connecting vessels that shunts most of the blood from the pulmonary trunk directly into the aorta. Blood in the aorta contains a mixture of oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood. Some aortic blood flows to the lower portions of the fetus. The rest flows into the umbilical arteries. Blood that enters the umbilical arteries is transported from the fetus to the placenta, where it is reoxygenated. Maternal changes during pregnancy. Secretion of human chorionic gonadotropin maintains the corpus luteum, which secretes estrogens and progesterone and inhibits follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone to stop reproductive cycles. Human chorionic gonadotropin level is high for the first 2 months and declines as placenta takes over production of the estrogens and progesterone. Once established, the placenta secretes large amounts of placental estrogens and progesterone, which maintain the uterine lining. Estrogens and progesterone also inhibit FSH and LH, and inhibit the uterine contractions and enlarge the reproductive organs. Placental lactogen stimulates breast and mammary gland development. Relaxin from the corpus luteum and placenta inhibits uterine contractions and relaxes the pelvic ligaments. Aldosterone promotes sodium and water retention. Parathyroid hormone maintains calcium concentrations in the maternal blood. Growth of the uterus displaces abdominal organs. It requires eating of smaller meals, it causes heartburn, and leads to increased urinary frequency. As the fetus grows, more oxygen is needed and more waste is excreted, causing maternal increases in blood volume, cardiac output, breathing rate, and urine production. To obtain adequate nutrition, food intake must be increased to supply needed vitamins, minerals, and proteins for the mother and fetus. In case of an inadequate diet, the maternal body will suffer nutrient deficiencies before the fetus does. The birth process. Pregnancy terminates with the birth process called parturition. It involves a decrease in progesterone, causing an increase in prostaglandins, which causes increased uterine contractions. The cervix becomes thin and starts to open. Stretching of the uterus and vagina stimulates birth. A positive feedback mechanism involving cervical stretch, oxytocin secretion, and uterine contractions occurs. The fetus is typically positioned with the head down, facing the cervix. Labor involves strong muscle contractions that force the fetus through the birth canal, which is the cervix, vagina, and vulva. Uterine contractions are aided by contraction of the abdominal wall muscles. And after birth of the fetus, the placenta is expelled from the uterus as afterbirth. Milk production and secretion. During pregnancy, placental estrogens and progesterone stimulate further development of the mammary glands, and prolactin is released by the anterior pituitary gland. Placental lactogen also promotes mammary gland development. But milk secretion does not begin until afterbirth due to inhibitory effects of placental progesterone and placental lactogen. The first milk is a thin, watery fluid called colostrum, which is rich in proteins and antibodies, but has a lower amount of carbohydrates and fats than milk. Mature milk is produced within a few days. In response to suckling by the infant, milk is ejected by a reflex involving secretion of oxytocin. Suckling also causes continued secretion of prolactin. This ensures that milk is produced during breastfeeding period. Breastfeeding mothers typically do not ovulate for several months due to inhibition of FSH and LH secretion by prolactin. This table shows you different agents that are contraindicated during breastfeeding. Human milk, benefits and alternatives. Advantages: human milk is 4.5% fat and 1.1% protein, which is suitable for supporting synthesis of myelin, the lipid electrical insulation that enables neurons in the developing brain to communicate effectively. In contrast, cow's milk has about 3.5% fat and about 3.1% protein. Protein in human milk has the proper balance of essential amino acids for human growth. It's more digestible, first food, than the cow's milk or infant formula. It protects newborns from many infections. Colostrum is rich in antibodies. Mature milk contains antibodies, enzymes, white blood cells. Lactoferrin binds iron, so microorganisms cannot use it to reproduce. Bifidus factors cause the growth of lactobacillus. Its acids kill harmful bacteria. Breastfed babies drink only until full. They're less likely to be obese than bottle-fed babies. Alternatives to breastfeeding: infant formula, cow's milk with nutrients added to make it more like human milk. Okay, aging the human lifespan. Postnatal period. It lasts from birth until death. Following birth, both the mother and newborn experience physiological and structural changes. Postnatal period can be divided into the neonatal period, infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and senescence. Dying is certainly part of the life cycle. The neonatal period. From birth to the end of the 4th week, the newborn begins to carry on respiration, obtain and digest nutrients, excrete waste, regulate body temperature, and make cardiovascular adjustments. The first breath must be powerful to expand the collapsed lungs. A surfactant reduces the surface tension in the lungs to help the lungs expand. The newborn uses stored fats and colostrum for energy for the first few days. The newborn secretes dilute urine. Temperature controls mechanisms and water and electrolyte balance may not function properly for a few days. This table shows you the cardiovascular adjustments in the newborn. Infancy, from the end of the 4th week to 1 year of age. The growth rate is high, may triple the birth weight. The teeth begin to erupt. The muscular nervous systems mature, so movement becomes coordinated. The infant starts to reach and grasp objects, sit, crawl, and stand. Communication begins, smiling, laughing, responding to some sounds, and they may speak a few words. Special nutritional requirements include proteins, calcium, vitamin D, iron, and vitamin C. Childhood is from 1 year of age to puberty. The growth rate is high. The primary teeth erupt, and then permanent teeth appear and replace them. Voluntary muscular control is achieved. The child learns to walk, run, and climb. The bladder and bowel controls are established. Communication skills are learned, like speaking, reading, writing, thinking, and emotions are maturing. Adolescence. This is from puberty to adulthood. The person becomes reproductively functional. Secondary sex characteristics develop via hormonal control. Growth spurts occur in skeletal and muscular systems. Increased appetite occurs during this time. It's under hormonal control. Females mature and reach full growth at earlier ages than males. Motor skills continue to develop. Intellectual abilities continue to mature. And continued development of emotional maturity occurs. Adulthood or maturity. This is adolescence to old age. The muscles strengthen and peak in the 20s in both sexes. By age 30, the body becomes functionally less efficient each year. Degenerative changes begin after age 30. Senses are less acute. The ligament elasticity decreases. During the 40s, people gain weight as metabolic rate decreases. Hair may turn gray or begin to fall out. Muscles lose strength. Skin may wrinkle. Arteries and arterioles narrow, and muscles lose strength. During the 50s, close vision is lost. Nail growth slows. Taste buds die. Skin loses elasticity. Women stop menstrual cycles. Muscle mass and weight decrease. During the 60s, may have some memory loss, but intellect usually stays sharp. By age 70, height has decreased 1 inch. Skin sags, connective tissue is lost. Senescence. This is the process of growing old. Degenerative changes continue. The body becomes less able to cope with demands placed on it. It results from wear and tear of body parts over a long period of time. Cell division in certain cell types declines. Cartilage wears away in the joints, causing stiffness and pain. Immune responses weaken. They may lose some intellectual functions. Sensory functions decline. Death results from disturbances to body systems or diseases that affect the vital organs. Life expectancy. Human lifespan could be up to 120 years, but most people die from disease or injury before that age. In countries where people live past age of 80, people have lived past age at which cancer and cardiovascular disease usually occur. Life expectancy. This is a projection of how long a person will live based on epidemiology. U.S. life expectancy in 2014 was 76.4 years for males and 81.2 years for females. Medical advances are increasing life expectancy. This table shows you the 10 leading causes of death in the United States in 2015. End of life. Reaching close to the end of life is a personal process influenced by belief and circumstance. A chronically ill person may show signs of impending death, often in a sequence. 2 stages of dying process include pre-active dying and active. In pre-active dying, it may take up to 3 months. Some are aware and begin the process of accepting their mortality. They lose interest in news, friends, conversation, and food. They may sleep a lot. They may develop problems with swallowing. In active dying, there are distinct signs. They sleep often, but they can be awakened. They may confuse time, place, and people. They lose appetite. Organ systems start shutting down slowly. Molecular and cellular aging. The aging process is difficult to analyze. A breakdown of a structure in the body affects the ability of other structures to function properly. The medical field of gerontology examines the biological changes of aging at all levels. At the molecular and cellular levels, active and passive aging occur. In passive aging, a breakdown of structures and slowing of functions occurs. Molecularly, it involves a degeneration of elastin and collagen proteins. Skin starts to sag and muscles lose their firmness. DNA replication is disrupted. Cells may die due to damaged genetic instructions. Biochemically, lipids break down. Aging membranes and mitochondria leak and malfunction. Cellular degradation is associated with free radicals. These are unpaired electrons that take electrons from other molecules and cause loss of stability in those molecules. In active aging, this involves new activities or the appearance of new substances. Lipofuscin granules result from the breakdown of lipids. Autoimmunity may develop, in which immune system attacks a person's own cells. Apoptosis is the process of programmed cell death. It's a process which begins before birth, as some cells die by apoptosis. This occurs throughout life. An example, in the fetal brain, half of the neurons die while those with strong synaptic connections remain alive. Mitosis and apoptosis are opposite, but complementary processes. Cell death is a normal part of life. Living to 100 and beyond. Centenarians, these are people who live past 100 years of age. The environment has important roles in the death of people 60 to 85, but genetics are more important in deaths at older ages. Centenarians have high density lipoprotein levels, which seems to add 20 years of life. Normal to low weight. They've not smoked. They handle stress well, and they do not have dementia. Centenarians have inherited protective genes and normal variants of genes that cause disease when mutant. Important genes in aging influence: glucose metabolism and insulin secretion, functioning of immune system, control of cell cycle, cholesterol metabolism, response to stress, and synthesis of antioxidant enzymes. And that's the end of the presentation on development.